Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone said something that made your blood boil? When was the last time a comment, a look, a rejection took you off your path for the entire day? We don't talk about this enough. But here's the truth. Most people don't want to hear being unbothered isn't about not feeling anything. It's about feeling everything and still choosing not to lose yourself in it. You are not weak for feeling hurt. You are not broken because a setback shook you. But what determines your power is how you respond after that moment. See, we've been taught the wrong definition of strength. We think the strongest person is the one who never flinches, who never cries, who never reacts. But strength, real strength, is the person who feels the heat rise, feels the anger brewing, feels the tears pushing through, and still says, I don't have to respond to this. That's power. That's mastery. That's freedom. Imagine this. A monk doesn't reach peace by avoiding the noise. He finds silence within the chaos. And you too can train that kind of discipline. But make no mistake, it is training. It doesn't just happen. Just like an athlete trains for a fight, you must train your mind for moments of emotional combat. You must train your focus like a laser beam. You must train your peace like it's sacred. Because at Island, every single day, life will throw tests at you. A rude message, en enfer comment, a plan that falls apart, a person who tries to poke at your insecurity just to see if they still have access to you. And every single one of those moments is a choice. Will you let them control your energy, or will you master the pause between stimulus and response? I want to talk about that pause. Because in that tiny space, the second between what happens to you and how you react is where your entire life can change. That moment is your dojo. That moment is where power is born. But here's the problem. Most people skip it. We've been conditioned to react fast. Someone says something petty, we clap back. Someone criticizes us, we go quiet and shrink. Someone disrespects us, and suddenly our mind becomes a courtroom building, arguments for war. That's reactive living. That's living like a puppet, not a person. And you are not here to be pulled by every string around you. You are here to become the architect of your inner world. So what does training look like? It's not glamorous. It's not some big epiphany moment. It's in the ordinary seconds of everyday life. It's when your coworker sends you that passive-aggressive email and you type a long reply, then delete it, then take a breath and reply with clarity instead of fire. It's when your partner says something that touches an old wound, but instead of accusing them, you pause and ask yourself, is this mine to react to or theirs to hold? It's when you're scrolling social media and feel comparison creeping in, but instead of spiraling, you close the app and choose presence. These are the moments that build spiritual muscle. These are the small wins that lead to massive identity shifts. Let's be clear, this isn't about suppressing how you feel. I'm not asking you to be numb. I'm asking you to be in control, to stop giving your energy to everything that demands it and start choosing where your peace goes. You don't owe your reaction to every situation. You don't owe your vulnerability to people who haven't earned it. You don't owe your story to someone who just wants to twist it. And most of all, you don't owe access to your power just because someone knocked on your emotional door. Let me say it again. You are allowed to feel everything and still not react. One of the most powerful things I've ever learned to say to myself is this doesn't deserve a reaction from me. Just because someone throws you an invitation to drama doesn't mean you have to attend the party. Let them throw the party. You stay home with your peace. So what does being unbothered really mean? It doesn't mean you're detached. It means you're disciplined. It doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're calm. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel deeply and respond wisely. And when you start living this way, people will notice your silence will start to speak louder than your words. Your calm will start to shake people more than your anger ever could. You become the person that others look at and say, how do they stay so grounded when everything else is on fire? Because while the world is spinning, you're rooted. Because while others are distracted, you're aligned. because you have stopped giving your power away and started giving it a purpose. So here's what I want you to reflect on today. What triggers have I been letting run my life? Is it that person who knows exactly what to say to get under your skin? Is it that feeling of rejection that makes you spiral in your own head? Is it the need to explain yourself to people who are never listening to begin with? What if, starting today, you practice just one thing? The pause. What if, in just one moment today, you said, I see this, I feel this, but I choose peace anyway? TTs. So take this moment right now. Leave a comment with one thing you're choosing to stop reacting to. Click like if you've ever given your power away and you're ready to take it back. And most importantly, subscribe, because this journey into emotional mastery, into becoming the most powerful version of yourself, is only just beginning. Thank you for being here. Let's rise together. Let's get something straight. You don't need a new morning routine. You need a new emotional response system. Most people spend so much time organizing their calendars, color coding their apps, curating their diets. But when it comes to their emotional habits, they're living on autopilot. We've all been there. Something happens, someone disappoints you, embarrasses you, challenges you, and before you even realize it, you've already reacted. Words left your mouth, your energy spiked, your mood dropped, your focus disappeared. And then you spend hours, sometimes days, recovering from that one moment. But what if you didn't need to recover? What if you learned to respond differently? What if you trained yourself to stop leaking energy and start reclaiming it? Because that is where emotional discipline begins. Emotional discipline is the art of owning your response, even when your emotions scream otherwise. It's the moment where your ego wants to fire back, but your wisdom says breathe. It's when someone pushes your button, and instead of reacting, you reprogram the button. Think about it. When you were a child, your responses were mostly instinctual. You cried when something hurt. You yelled when something was taken from you. You lashed out when you felt unsafe. But now you're not a child. And yet, so many of us are walking around with grown-up bodies but untrained emotions, still spiraling the moment someone triggers that old pain, that unresolved memory, that hidden insecurity. That's why you feel out of control. Not because you are weak, but because you've never been taught to train your inner world. So let's train right now. Start by noticing, what are your go-to reactions when things don't go your way? Do you retreat in silence? Do you blow up with anger? Do you start self-blaming, overthinking, catastrophizing? That awareness, that's your first rep in the gym of emotional mastery, because you can't transform a pattern you don't recognize. You can't rise above a loop if you keep denying you're caught in it. The truth is, most people don't need more information. They need more discipline with what they already know. You already know who triggers you. You already know what situations knock you off balance. Now it's time to build a new relationship with those moments. And here's the game-changing mindset shift. Your reaction is not the other person's fault. It's your responsibility. That doesn't mean they were right. That doesn't mean what they did was fair. That doesn't mean you suppress your truth. It means this: you don't outsource your power to someone else's behavior. Because the moment you say, they made me feel this way, you've handed them the remote control to your peace. Emotional discipline says, I can acknowledge this pain without feeding it. I can honor this emotion without becoming it. I can feel deeply and still lead wisely. Let me ask you something. If someone disrespects you and you lose your composure, who's really in charge? If someone says something petty and it ruins your day, who's really got the power? Every time you let someone trigger you into reacting, you're saying, here, take my energy, take my focus, take my sense of self. But when you choose your response, when you take a breath and stand in your clarity, you say, no, thank you. I've trained for this. I've worked too hard for my peace. I will not betray my growth just to prove a point. That's not avoidance. That's alignment. Let me tell you a story. There was a moment in my own life where I was betrayed by someone I trusted deeply. and everything in me wanted to react. I had messages drafted, calls queued up. I wanted justice. I wanted clarity. I wanted revenge. But instead, I sat, I breathed, I journaled. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much about who I was becoming. And what I realized was this: reacting might feel good in the short term, but staying grounded always wins in the long run. Because when you protect your peace, you protect your path. Here's something most people don't realize. Emotions are data, not dictators. They're messengers, not masters. Anger might be telling you that a boundary was crossed. Fear might be signaling that growth is near. Jealousy might be revealing a desire you haven't owned yet, but they are not your commands. You are not required to obey every emotional impulse like it's gospel. You get to pause. You get to inquire. You get to ask, is this feeling rooted in truth or in trauma? That question alone can save you from years of repeating cycles that no longer serve you. I want to leave you with a tool I use every day. It's simple, but powerful. I call it the 3-breath reset. When something triggers you, first breath, breathe into your body. Feel where the emotion lives. Is it your chest, your stomach, your throat? Second breath, name the emotion. Literally say to yourself, this is anger, or this is shame. No judgment, just awareness. Third breath, ask, what does the highest version of me want to do next? That's it, 3 breaths. But those 3 breaths could save your relationship, could protect your integrity, could keep you aligned with your purpose. And the more you do it, the more automatic it becomes. Discipline isn't just about routines. It's not just about waking up early or hitting goals. Discipline is saying, I will not allow a 5-second trigger to ruin my 5-year vision. That's elite thinking. That's what separates the reactive from the resilient, the ordinary from the aligned, the scattered from the powerful. So today, ask yourself, where am I still reacting from emotion instead of responding from intention? Because when you choose emotional discipline, you're not just managing your mood, you're reclaiming your power. And once that power is back in your hands, nothing outside of you can shake the foundation you've built within. Let me challenge what you've been taught, because the world's been lying to you about detachment. They told you it means not caring. They told you it's cold, distant, indifferent. They told you it makes you heartless, disconnected, robotic. But that's not detachment. That's disconnection. That's avoidance. That's emotional suppression. True detachment, it's the opposite. It's not shutting down, it's seeing clearly. It's not walking away from love, it's walking away from attachment to outcomes. It's not being less human, it's being more conscious. Detachment is not about removing emotion, it's about removing distortion. Here's what detachment actually is. It's the space between yourself and your reactions, the space between your intention and the chaos. It's standing in a storm, hearing the thunder, feeling the rain, and still knowing who you are beneath it all. Because the truth is, we've spent so much of our lives confusing intensity for intimacy. We chase the drama. We feed on the highs and lows. We wrap our worth around how someone else responds, texts, praises, loves, or leaves us. And when life doesn't go our way, we crumble not because we're weak, but because we were too attached to the outcome. Attachment says, I'll be okay if this works out. Detachment says, I'll be okay either way. And that's the power shift we all need. Because life will disappoint you. People will let you down. Plans will fall apart. Opportunities will vanish. And if your peace is tied to things staying perfect, you'll constantly be anxious, reactive, and emotionally drained. But if your peace is rooted in something deeper, in presence, in purpose, in self-awareness, then you become unshakable. Detachment doesn't make you numb, it makes you wise. Let me give you a practical example. Have you ever sent a message and then waited, refreshing your screen, rereading your words, questioning if you said too much, too little, too soon? That's not presence, that's attachment. And what does it do? It robs your moment, it steals your peace, it anchors you in worry. But detachment would say, I said what needed to be said. Now I let go. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough to protect your state of mind. You honor your energy by not clinging to what's already out of your control. Let's break it down even more. Attachment is rooted in control. Detachment is rooted in clarity. Attachment says, if they leave, I'll fall apart. Detachment says, if they leave, I'll grieve, but I'll grow. Attachment says, this has to happen now, or it means I failed. Detachment says, I trust the process even when the path looks unclear. Attachment is ego-based. It needs things to validate you. It needs people to approve you. It needs outcomes to define you. Detachment is soul-based. It says, I already am. I already matter. I already belong. That kind of internal grounding is rare, but that's exactly why it's powerful. You know what happens when you master detachment? You stop fighting every battle. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop begging for closure from people who were never meant to stay. And you start responding instead of reacting. You stop saying, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this here to teach me? You become the kind of person that people can't manipulate because you're no longer held hostage by their opinion. You become the kind of leader who doesn't overextend because you know that helping others should never come at the cost of abandoning yourself. You become magnetic because detachment is clarity, and clarity is irresistible. But let me be honest, detachment isn't easy at first. In fact, it feels like loss because you're so used to being entangled in everything, everyone's emotions, everyone's expectations, every result, every reaction, every text, every delay. Letting go of that feels empty at first. But it's not emptiness, it's space. And in that space, clarity walks in. I remember a time when I was so attached to a version of myself I had outgrown. The people, the roles, the validation, the routine, and the thought of walking away felt like death. But that's the paradox. The death of attachment is the beginning of identity. When you let go of who you thought you had to be, you finally meet who you truly are. So how do you begin practicing detachment? Here are 3 questions I want you to reflect on. What am I holding on to that's no longer holding me? A person, a title, a version of yourself that no longer reflects your values? What outcome am I obsessing over, and what would happen if I released the timeline? Could you still move forward? Could you still trust yourself? Am I showing up for growth or grasping for control? Because sometimes what we call love is just fear wrapped in obsession. And don't get me wrong, this work is daily. You don't wake up one morning fully detached. You train for it, you slip, you rise, you reflect. You catch yourself attaching and gently choose again. And over time, your nervous system calms, your focus returns, your confidence grows because you no longer chase the illusion of control. You embody the presence of trust. Remember this, detachment doesn't say, I don't care. It says, I care deeply, but I will not self-destruct in the process. Detachment is clarity in motion. It's looking at a person, a dream, or a plan and saying, I want this, but I don't need it to complete me. I desire this, but I will not let it destroy me. I trust that what's meant for me will find me, and what's not meant will free me. That mindset, that clarity is where real peace lives. And once you touch that peace, you'll never chase K's again. Let's face it, control is a drug. And most of us, without even knowing it, are addicted. We try to control how people see us. We try to control how relationships unfold. We try to control our careers, our timelines, even our healing process. And when life doesn't play by our script, we panic, we spiral, we question everything. But here's the truth you need to hear. The need to control is rooted in fear, and fear disguised as order will never give you peace. When you grip life too tightly, you don't protect it, you suffocate it. Think about the last time something didn't go as planned. You gave it your all, you did everything right, and still, the door closed. The person pulled away, the outcome slipped through your fingers. And in that moment, did you try harder? Did you hold on tighter? Did you replay the what ifs until your mind was exhausted? That's the illusion of control at work. It tells you, if I just do more, say more, fix more, I can make it bend to my will. But real growth begins when you finally admit, this is not mine to force. Letting go of control isn't giving up. It's growing up. I want you to imagine this. You're holding sand in your hand. If you squeeze too hard, the sand slips through. But if you keep your palm open, the sand stays. That's life. That's love. That's your peace. When you force, you lose. When you allow, you grow. Letting go of control is scary because it feels like surrender. And surrender feels like weakness. But that's another myth. Surrender is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the wisdom to know when effort turns into obsession. It's the courage to say, I've done my part now, I trust life to do its part. The hardest part of healing, of growth, of transformation, is that so much of it happens in the unknown, in the dark, in the in-between. You're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. And it's tempting to rush that process, to want guarantees, quick wins, closure. But healing doesn't follow your timeline. Breakthroughs don't arrive on schedule. Clarity comes when it's earned, not demanded. And so we have to learn the art of release. Let me ask you something personal. Where in your life are you holding on too tightly? A relationship you're trying to fix? An outcome you're trying to force? A version of yourself you don't want to outgrow? We think holding on makes us strong, but sometimes strength is in the release. Release the need to always be right. Release the obsession with outcomes. Release the pressure to have it all figured out. That release, that letting go, is what makes room for what's real. Because here's the most beautiful paradox of life. You don't manifest by forcing. You manifest by flowing. You align. You show up. You surrender. And then the right things find their way to you, not because you chased them, but because you became someone they naturally align with. I remember a season in my life when I kept trying to fix everything. I was managing people's emotions, forcing progress, chasing answers. And one day a mentor said to me, Jay, if you keep digging up the seed to see if it's growing, it'll never take root. That hit hard because that's what so many of us are doing. We plant intentions, but we don't trust the soil. We demand fruit before we've watered the roots. And that's not faith. That's fear wearing a mask. Letting go of control also means letting go of the need to be understood. Some of you are exhausting yourselves trying to explain your heart to people who don't have the capacity to receive it. And I get it. You want closure. You want clarity. You want to feel seen and heard. But some closure doesn't come from conversation. It comes from decision. The decision to stop shrinking just to be accepted. The decision to stop begging for energy that's not reciprocated. The decision to walk away, not because they're evil, but because they're not evolving. You can still love someone and choose to grow without them. You can still hope for peace and not chase it at the cost of your own. Letting go of control is also about releasing your timeline. And this is hard because you had plans. By 30, I'll be married. By 35, I'll be successful. By 40, I'll have it all figured out. But life doesn't follow your spreadsheet. It follows your alignment. And some of the best things in your life will arrive late, but right on time for your growth. So instead of asking, why hasn't it happened yet? Start asking, who am I becoming while I wait? Because that's the point. The universe doesn't respond to force. It responds to frequency. And when your energy becomes rooted in peace, instead of pressure, what's meant for you starts flowing without resistance. So here's the truth I want you to carry. You don't need to control everything to feel safe. You need to trust yourself more deeply. Trust that you'll handle what happens. Trust that you'll find clarity in the chaos. Trust that the version of you that's waiting on the other side of this surrender is stronger, wiser, and more grounded than you ever imagined. Letting go of control isn't passive. It's powerful. It's saying, I release my grip on things I cannot dictate. I reclaim my power to respond with trust. not tension. You choose peace or panic, surrender or struggle, alignment or anxiety. And if you can hold that energy even just for today, you've already won, because peace isn't found in the outcome, it's found in the release. Let me ask you something real, and I want you to sit with this. How many of your relationships are built on fear? Fear of being alone, fear of being misunderstood, fear of starting over, fear that without them, you won't feel enough. We don't like to admit this, but for most people, attachment is just fear wearing perfume. We say, I love them, but what we really mean is, I need them to act a certain way so I can feel secure. We say, I'm chasing this dream because it's my passion. But what we really mean is, I'm terrified of being average and I don't know who I am without achievement. Let's be honest, attachment has been the root of so much of our suffering. But here's the good news. Detachment is the root of your freedom. When you start living from a place of healthy detachment, everything begins to shift, especially your relationships and your goals, because suddenly you stop clinging, you stop proving, you stop trying to fix people so you can feel better about yourself, and you start loving from clarity. You start connecting from fullness. You start pursuing goals without letting them become your identity. That's the transformation. Let's start with relationships. We've all been taught that love means sacrifice. Give more, do more, be available, be nice, be needed. But that's not love, that's codependence. And when you love from lack, your relationships become emotional transactions. You give so you won't be abandoned. You please so you won't be rejected. You overextend so you won't be replaced. And in doing so, you lose yourself. But when you love from wholeness, everything changes. You're no longer trying to complete each other. You're complementing each other. You're no longer anxiously watching their behavior to feel secure because your security is already internal. You stop reacting to every emotional wave because your peace no longer depends on how someone else feels. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. It makes you emotionally sovereign, where your peace, your worth, and your identity are not on leash to someone else's choices. You know what that does? It filters your connections. Suddenly, you stop trying to earn love. You start observing. You stop trying to control how people show up. You simply watch and choose accordingly. You're not punishing people for who they are. You're just deciding whether who they are aligns with the life you're building. That's not selfish. That's selective. And selection is a sacred act when it comes from self-respect. Now let's talk about goals. Because detachment doesn't just change how you love, it completely transforms how you pursue. You've been taught to go hard, hustle, grind, obsess. But obsession often masquerades as passion when really it's just fear in disguise. We think, if I don't get this, I've failed. If I don't make it happen now, I've wasted time. If I don't succeed, I won't matter. That's toxic attachment to the outcome. And here's the danger: when you attach your identity to the result, every setback becomes a personal attack. Every delay feels like a death sentence. Every no feels like a wound to your worth. But detachment says, this goal inspires me, but it doesn't define me. I will give it everything, but I will not lose myself chasing it. That mindset makes you unstoppable, because now you're not shaken by rejection. You're not broken by delay. You're not defined by results. You're focused on becoming, not just achieving. And the person who's obsessed with becoming will always go further than the person who's addicted to arriving. I remember working with a woman who built her whole identity around her title. Her job was her worth. Her salary was her value. Her productivity was her proof. And then one day layoffs happened. Everything she built crumbled. But instead of collapsing, she took a deep breath and said, I forgot who I was beyond my performance. But now I get to rebuild from essence, not ego. And that moment, it didn't mark her downfall. It was her rebirth. Here's what I want you to understand. Detachment doesn't make you lazy. It makes you wise. It says, I will show up. I will do the work. I will give my heart. But then I will release the outcome, not because I don't care, but because I refuse to be owned by something I can't control. That is emotional maturity. That is spiritual depth. That is how people who live with peace also create massive impact. Because when your peace is intact, your power multiplies. Here are 3 signs. You're operating from detachment in your goals and relationships. You no longer chase validation. You move in alignment. You're not looking for applause. You're listening for peace. You stop over explaining. You trust that the right people, the right opportunities, and the right timing don't need convincing. You're no longer triggered by silence, distance, or delay. You don't panic when people pull back or when results take longer. You use the pause to check in, not to chase. So how do you build this detachment? Start with this simple but profound mantra. I give my best and let the rest unfold. Say it every morning. Say it before the conversation. Say it before you walk into the meeting. Say it when you send the message. Say it when you pursue the goal. And then breathe. Release it. Because when you release what you can't control, you reclaim what you can. Your focus, your energy, your integrity, your direction. Detachment doesn't mean you care less. It means you care more wisely. You care enough to stay centered, to protect your energy, to honor your alignment over your anxiety, to trust your path even when it takes turns you didn't plan. So whether it's a relationship you're holding on to or a dream you're chasing too tightly, ask yourself, am I operating from fear or from faith? Because the version of you who lives from faith, that version is already free. There's a quote I love that says, not everything that demands your attention deserves your energy. And I want to take that deeper today because we live in a world that's always loud, always reacting, always responding, always shouting to be heard. But what if I told you that real power isn't in what you say, it's in what you ignore? We've been conditioned to believe that strength looks like speaking up, clapping back, defending, explaining, proving, correcting. But the truth is, sometimes silence is the loudest statement you'll ever make. Not because you're weak, but because you've outgrown the need to be involved in everything. Let's start here. Silence is not passive. It's a strategic, spiritual decision. It says, I know who I am. I don't need to convince you. I don't need to perform for approval. I don't need to shrink for comfort. When you choose silence, you're not avoiding, you're preserving, you're conserving the energy that used to be wasted on arguments that go nowhere, on people who misunderstand you on purpose, on negativity that only exists to test your peace. That's not avoidance. That's wisdom. Let me ask you, how many times have you typed out a message, then deleted it? How many times have you been ready to fire back, then paused and chose silence instead? Those moments, they're not weaknesses. They're milestones in your emotional evolution. Because every time you resist the urge to react, you're saying to yourself, my peace matters more than proving my point. My growth matters more than being right. My path is too valuable to be derailed by pettiness. And here's what's wild. People will try to pull you into chaos just to see if you'll abandon your peace. They'll bait you. They'll push your buttons. They'll provoke a reaction because your silence, your calm triggers their insecurity. But when you choose not to respond, when you walk away from the drama, the disrespect, the gossip, you disappoint their ego and protect your soul. That's strength. Let's break down what silence actually looks like in real life. It looks like not replying to a passive-aggressive text because you realize the intention behind it isn't dialogue, it's dysfunction. It looks like exiting a conversation mid-conflict, not to avoid it, but to protect your emotional clarity. It looks like hearing a rumor about you and not bothering to correct it because your truth isn't up for debate. Silence doesn't mean you're disconnected. It means you've become so anchored in who you are, you no longer feel the need to respond to noise that doesn't align with your vision. But it's not just about silence. It's about what you choose to ignore, because what you ignore reveals what you've outgrown. And sometimes that includes people who only reach out when they need something, comments meant to provoke you, patterns of disrespect you used to tolerate, cycles of drama you once confused with love, your own thoughts that spiral into self-doubt. Ignoring doesn't mean pretending it doesn't exist. It means you've decided this is not worth my energy anymore. Let me share something personal. There was a time when I felt the need to explain myself constantly. If someone misunderstood me, I'd over-explain. If someone questioned my decisions, I'd justify. If someone disrespected me, I'd argue. But all that did was exhaust me because I was outsourcing my peace to people who weren't even listening. Then I learned this. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You just need to be clear on who you are. So I stopped explaining, stopped defending, started observing. And guess what? I gained more peace in silence than I ever did in explanation. Now listen, this doesn't mean you stay silent in the face of injustice. This doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It means you choose your battles with discernment. It means you stop fighting for things that don't deserve a seat at your table. It means you recognize that your focus is your most sacred resource and not everything gets a piece of it. Here are 3 powerful questions to ask yourself in triggering moments. Does this truly matter in the long run? Will this still be important in 5 days, 5 months, 5 years? Is this worthy of my peace? Or is it just bait trying to hook me into an old pattern? Will this response move me forward or just feed my ego? Because if it's the latter, your silence is the real flex. These questions create space. And that space is where growth lives. I want to give you a simple practice, something you can do every day. The 5-minute energy audit. At the end of each day, ask yourself, where did my energy go today? What conversations drained me? What thoughts spiraled? What did I ignore and what should I have ignored? This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. Because once you see the leaks, you can start sealing them. And once you seal them, you create space for what truly matters. I'll leave you with this. The most powerful people in any room are rarely the loudest. They're the ones who have learned the art of restraint. The ones who don't flinch when provoked. The ones who don't react to every comment, every insult, every test. They're too focused on their purpose, too rooted in their peace, too disciplined with their energy. And that kind of presence, it's magnetic, it's unshakable, it's unforgettable. So the next time someone throws shade, the next time life invites you into petty, the next time your ego wants to clap back, choose silence, choose stillness, choose mastery, not because you're weak, but because you've evolved. Let me leave you with this final truth. Your power is not in your reaction. Your power is in your focus. Because whatever has your focus owns your energy. And whatever owns your energy shapes your life. Most people don't lack strength. They lack focus. They don't need more motivation. They need less distraction. They don't need a better plan. They need a better filter. You are not overwhelmed because you're weak. You're overwhelmed because you're available to too many things that don't matter. And today, that changes. Let's talk about what real focus, Island. Focus is not intensity. It's not staring at a screen or forcing yourself through a to-do list. It's not just cutting people off or turning off your phone. Focus is clarity. Clarity on who you are. Clarity on who you're becoming. Clarity on what's no longer worth your time. It's being so rooted in your values, your peace, and your vision that anything outside of that becomes background noise. That's why focus is freedom. Because the moment you decide what matters, you automatically free yourself from everything that doesn't. Let me ask you something. How many hours have you spent in the past month overthinking conversations that already happened? How many mornings have you woken up and the first thing that hits your heart is anxiety about someone else's opinion? How many opportunities have passed you by, not because you weren't ready, but because you were too distracted? Distraction is the silent killer of potential. And most people don't realize that until years have passed and they're still stuck at the same emotional level, still explaining, still proving, still reacting, still clinging. But your future, your freedom requires a new level of focus. Focus looks like saying, I don't attend every argument I'm invited to. I don't water dead plants. I don't chase what drains me. Focus looks like silence in chaos, stillness in confusion, peace in provocation. Because here's the truth. You don't rise by adding more. You rise by letting go. You don't evolve by controlling everything. You evolve by releasing what no longer belongs in your life. And sometimes the biggest breakthrough you'll ever have is simply ignoring the things that once consumed you. Let's take this deeper. Focus is a choice. It's a daily decision to say, this is where I'm going. This is who I want to be. And I'm no longer giving access to anything that contradicts that. And that includes old identities, toxic patterns, small arguments, petty distractions, guilt. That was never yours. People who only show up to drain you. Every time you say no to those things, you say yes to your peace. You say yes to your mission. You say yes to you. I want you to think of focus like a garden. You have a finite amount of water, your time, your energy, your attention. And every time you water a weed, a thought that tears you down, a relationship that's already expired, a situation that no longer serves you, you take away water from what's meant to grow. Now imagine if you redirected that water, that energy, to nourishing your values, to developing your self-worth, to building the vision you've been carrying quietly for years. That's not just focus, that's alignment. And when you move in alignment, everything changes. Here's the truth. Most people won't tell you your peace is expensive, and it should be. Not everyone deserves access to it. Not every come on deserves your energy. Not every setback deserves a reaction. When you live in focus, you're not just building habits, you're building boundaries. And those boundaries protect your clarity, your creativity, your capacity. They make you magnetic to the right people and invisible to the wrong ones. Let me give you 3 simple questions to help protect your focus every day. Will this matter in 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years? If not, release it. Does this align with the version of me I'm becoming? If not, decline it. Am I doing this out of purpose or out of pressure? If it's pressure, step back. Use these questions as filters, because your focus is not just about what you do. It's about who you allow yourself to become. Let me tell you something from my own journey. There was a time when I thought being busy meant being valuable. I said yes to everything. Every opportunity, every invite, every expectation. But I was fragmented, pulled in 100 directions, always doing, never becoming. And then one day, a mentor told me, Jay, the most powerful people in the world aren't the busiest. They're the most focused. That changed me forever, because it reminded me, you don't have to do everything. You just have to do the right things with your whole heart. So if you've been feeling stuck, scattered, exhausted, it's not because you're not capable. It's because your energy is being spent on things that don't feed your future. And the cure is focus, not hustle, not burnout. Focus. You want freedom? Stop fighting everything. Start filtering everything. You want peace? Stop reacting to everything. Start rising above anything that isn't aligned. You want growth? Then your greatest responsibility is protecting the energy that builds it. That's not selfish. That's sacred. So today, I'm asking you to recommit to your focus, to wake up every morning and remind yourself, I am not available for chaos. I am not available for distractions. I am not available for anything that costs me my clarity. Because when your focus becomes non-negotiable, your life becomes unstoppable. And that version of you, focused, peaceful, rooted, aligned, that version is already waiting. All you have to do is ignore the noise long enough to become them. You've made it. This is your breakthrough. Now take your peace seriously. Protect your energy like royalty, and move through life with the quiet confidence of someone who knows not everything deserves my reaction. Not everyone deserves my attention. And my focus is my freedom.